right, what ammunition I personally use for self-defense and the particular handguns that I keep loaded or carry for self-defense. Now, I don't keep every one of my handguns loaded for self-defense or carry them. However, the ones that I do keep loaded for self-defense and carry, I brought out today. And I thought, what better way to show a good ballistic test than to show what I carry personally for self-defense. And a lot of people respect my opinion because I do a lot of ammo testing. So there's specific rounds that I use for self-defense and personal protection. And I use them all for a very specific reason. So I thought I would come out today. I already got the specifications for velocity listed and all of that. Just to come out and do a simple ballistic test where I compare side by side the rounds I personally use for self-defense. And more importantly, why do I use those rounds for self-defense? Because there's very specific reasons. Some people would not consider the rounds I picked the best, and they're certainly not the most powerful, but there's reasons why I picked the rounds I picked. So as I go along, I will explain what I use and why I use it. So I am going to go through my 10% clear ballistics. And what I got here is I got about 3 inches of clear ballistics and 2 inches of MDF here, medium density fiberboard. This represents like our ribs or sternum after going through a pectoral muscle. We're covered by 4 layers of denim, and then we got more clear ballistics. So it should be a pretty straightforward test, but you know, there's going to be some explanations along the way of what's going on. So let's get started with this ballistics gel test. All right, 22 long rifle, Beretta Bobcat, 2.4 inch barrel. What I use is the Blazer 40 grain lead round nose. This is the same thing as the mini mag, except it's not plated. And why do I use this versus the mini mag? And that's because the mini mag, with its plating, it reduces its velocity by 50 feet per second. So the mini mag does about 830 feet per second. This does 880 feet per second, or 69 foot-pounds energy. So we're gonna go through our clear ballistics and MDF behind that, and we'll see what kind of performance we get with the 22. And what we're looking at is about 9.5 inches, which would typically be about 11.5 inches without the MDF. So that's pretty good as far as our penetration goes. And that's key with 22, is getting good penetration. With the hollow points, a lot of times the expansion would limit the penetration down to nothing. So this is doing pretty good. Let's move on to something else. All right, next up we have our 380 ACP, and what I personally use is the Winchester White Box 95 grain jacketed hollow point. And the reason why I use that in my LCP here is because what we were looking at is 838 feet per second, or 148 foot-pounds energy. Why that matters is because a lot of times some of those hotter 380s, they won't cycle in this. But a little bit below 150 foot-pounds energy, typically everything cycles in this. And the bullet still seems to perform pretty well. So let's see what we get here with our 380 ACP Winchester White Box and our ballistic gel test. All right, so we got limited penetration or limited expansion, but our penetration is right at about 16, so that would typically be about 18 inches in straight gel. So that's pretty much perfect what you want. We got a nice straight line penetration. You know, a lot of 380 rounds, they'll basically stop at like 8-9 inches in this after going through the MDF, which would be a little bit shallow as far as penetration goes, but this does quite well. So let's move on to something else. All right, 5-inch pistol, 9mm, and I use none other than 124 grain plus P HST. We're getting 1237 feet per second out of this 5-inch pistol, or 421 foot-pounds energy. A good round. So let's see what I get in my ballistic gel test with 9mm plus P. So this drifted a little bit close to my 380 path, but it didn't actually intersect it, I don't think. And if it did, it doesn't really matter because it stopped before the 380 actually. So we're looking at about 13 3/4, which would be about 15 3/4 without the MDF. And you know, perfect performance pretty much. So that's why I choose that. So let's move on to something else. All right, Taurus G2C 3.2 inch 9mm. Same thing as the 5 inch, except we're getting 1181 feet per second or 384 foot-pounds. So in this little pistol, we're getting almost the same powers in the 5-inch pistol. And I didn't include my 4-inch barrels Ruger Security 9 because the velocity I get in that is about the same as this. So this kind of covers both of them. So and a little bit shorter barrel, we'll see what this does. So what we're looking at here is we got just a hair more penetration. We're at about 14 1/4, which would be about 16 1/4 if we count the MDF. So pretty much perfect performance. All right, 5-inch barrel, 40 Smith Wesson. I keep this thing loaded with, you guessed it, HST 40. So what we're looking at here, we have the same energy. We have 421 foot-pounds energy. Same energy as the 9mm, but what we're looking at is 1026 feet per second, 180 grain bullet. So the heavier bullet, it's got a little more momentum. So let's see how the 40 does. And lined up to 3 inches here, and we have pretty much the same performance as our damage path is identical to the 3.2 inch barrel Taurus G2C. We're at about 14 and a half, 14 1/4, so about 16 1/4 without the MDF. So doing real well. Let's put one more round in here. All right, snub nose 357 Magnum. This has been a hard choice to make. I've tried for about 2.5 years since I own this gun to find a good 357 Magnum load, and I've not been able to. None of them perform adequately. So what I have chosen to be the perfect carry round for a gun like this is actually Buffalo Bore 38 Special Plus P. This is the only one that had controllable recoil and still good performance. So what we were looking at with that was 1111 feet per second, 343 foot-pounds energy. So a little bit less powerful than a typical 357 mag, but a lot more powerful than most 38 special rounds. So we'll see what kind of performance we get with this 357 mag with a really hot 38 in it. And what we got there is a little bit of over penetration, not really that great of expansion, but what we're seeing here is that it stayed in that first block. So we're looking at close to 19 inches, which would be close to 21 inches. Not a whole lot of expansion, but I still say that did a lot of damage. And that's really my choice, because if I used a 357 Magnum, I really wouldn't be able to get a follow-up shot very easily. And this is light recoil. It's still a 38 as far as the recoil feels, and we're still getting adequate penetration on all of that. So let's switch up this gel block and my denim patch, and we'll move on to some more. All right, so now I'm moving on to probably what is the most important round here, and this is my carry gun. This is what I carry every day, 6-shot LCR and 327 Federal Magnum, and what I decided to carry with that is Buffalo Bore's heavy 327 Federal Magnum. And then the name is kind of misleading because it's actually a little bit lower powered than a lot of rounds. Like Gold Dot 327, it has good terminal performance. However, the recoil is so heavy. it is hard to shoot. As where this round, its recoil is perfect. It's right in the middle here. What we're looking at here is we have 1282 feet per second, or 366 foot-pounds energy. But when you put 366 foot-pounds on only a 32 caliber, it does stuff that like a 9mm wouldn't necessarily do. So it's a good round overall. So let's see what we get with my carry round. This is the round that I most likely would have to use if I had to use one. So let's see what we get. I actually moved both these gel blocks, which is pretty impressive. But what we're looking at here is we got okay expansion, and we're right at like 18 3/4, which would be like 21 3/4. So the penetration's a little bit high, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because a little hot 32 like that, you know, that could punch through some hard barriers pretty easily. And I've found that in my testing. This is the only thing that competes with 9mm and sometimes beats it as far as penetration goes through hard stuff. So it's a good street round for sure. And typically, you know, if we can stop in one, I think it would stop in an average attacker. So let's move on to something else. Next up, I have my model 69 and 44 Magnum. This has been a challenging gun to find a good house defense load for, because even when you take the same powered, lightly loaded 44 mag that has the same power as a typical 357 mag, there's always more felt recoil. And I think that's partly just from the bore size and partly from just the bullets usually being a little bit heavier. So what I have done is I found the round that has about the same felt recoil as your typical 357 Magnum in a full-size revolver. And what that happens to be is the Buffalo Bore Heavy 38 Special lead free. So what we're working with here is we're working with 1,009 feet per second, 200 grains. So we're at 452 foot-pounds energy. So it's a lot hotter than a typical 44 Special, but it's not overbearing. And what I like about these rounds specifically is they are loaded to the same overall length as a 44 Magnum. The bullet's pushed out really far, so if you had to aim this thing, you know, you can see these rounds, they look pretty intimidating. So we'll see what we get with the Heavy 44 Special lead free. I'd say that probably has even less felt recoil than a typical 357 mag. And what we're seeing here is we have a perfect balance of penetration and energy transfer. So we went through and it looks like we started really expanding where it really counts. And we're looking at about 16.5 inches, which should be about 18.5. That's pretty much perfectly ideal. And we can see that once we got here, our pedals just ripped open. So even though that's a 44 Special, you can just tell by looking at that, that's a man stopper. And I have I have no regrets using that for my house gun. So we have one more load that, you know, it's pretty much one of my main go-to guns, and we'll test what I use. And of course we have my Smith Wesson 686 with a 4-inch barrel. This has been one of my favorite handguns over the past 4 years. And what I keep in that is this is Remington semi-jacketed hollow point. This is the old classic man stopper round. And what we have for this is 1391 feet per second, 537 foot-pounds energy. So our energy is not extreme, but I a lot of times get a lot of comments on this. They're like, well, 357 SIG is the same thing, but really is not, because 357 SIG is usually a little bit slower. Also, 357 mag, it's like half lead, so we have fragmentation of that hollow point. And even if we clog that hollow point with denim, it doesn't matter because it's so soft, it'll just explode. So it's a good overall round, and it's 96% one-shot stop on a lot of the statistical data. So Let's see what we get in our ballistic test here. Wow, the denim patch is over there like 12, 15 feet. So what we're looking at here is it dumped its energy up here. So we're not really gonna see a whole lot of that in this gel block because it dumped it in the first few inches there, and then it just kind of went straight through, and we stopped at 13.5, so about 15.5. It's perfect amount of penetration. So I don't know, between the two of these, I'm almost looking at the 44 Special as maybe that's a more potent round, but this one certainly did okay, and it dumped a lot of that energy right up here. So that's what you get today. Those are my personal rounds that I trust for self-defense, and I've come up with these equations not based 100% on those gel block tests, and that's what you have to understand. A lot of people will look at that, but because they're not on this side of the camera, they're not realizing what's going on here. They're not realizing what's going on here. You know, a lot of those rounds that perform perfect are like, whoa, they got so much recoil, they got a lot of flash, the camera sometimes doesn't pick up. They got a lot of stuff going on, blast of stuff coming back in my face and my thumbs of just powder and all kinds of stuff like that, that they're not seeing. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking rounds that I've previously tested as they shoot great. Follow-up shots shoot great. The recoil is low. They felt right. I shot them on a distance. They shoot right. And out of all those rounds, what's the best ones out of the ones that shoot great, that have the best terminal performance? And that's these. So what you're seeing here may not 100% represent what the story I'm trying to share. Out of the rounds that shoot the best, these are my choices because I 100% feel like they are the best rounds for those particular guns. So that's what you get today. And also reliability, you know, like the LCP, you know, a lot of the 380 rounds, they just jam up. And that's the same with the 22. That's the same with 9mm, same with all of them. So reliability, shootability, and then the best terminal performance out of all of those. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.